Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Cuando compras en JCPenney los outfits del verano con tu cupón de 20% extra, no solo te estás preparando para las fiestas y el verano, te estás preparando para lucir super top toda la temporada con 20% extra en tu bolsillo. La prueba está en el recibo. Sí, es JCPenney. Cupón válido hasta el 22 de junio en selección de estilos. Aplican algunas exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Welcome to True Crime and the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Alexis Knight. What happens when the system protects its own? What happens when the headlines get louder, the stories get messier, and the people start choosing sides, not based on facts, but on who they already believe? Well, here today we're digging into 2 explosive legal battles playing out in real time. One is happening in a Massachusetts courtroom where a woman named Karen Reed is on trial for allegedly murdering her Boston police officer boyfriend. But the deeper you go, the more it looks like a case of cover-ups, a small-town corruption, and a woman being thrown to the wolves. The other is the storm surrounding Sean Diddy Combs, a man once called the king of hip-hop, now facing a federal investigation that could dismantle his entire empire. Lawsuits, raids, accusations of trafficking, and the possibility that he might take the stand. These aren't just scandals. These are the stories behind the stories. Because in the court of public opinion, guilt is often decided before the facts ever get laid bare. Not just following the headlines, we're dissecting what they mean. Where do the cases stand now? And what happens if these defendants win? What happens if they lose? And most of all, what if everything you thought you knew is dead wrong? Welcome to True Crime in the Court of Public Opinion. Let's get into it. What happened that night with Karen Reed? The trial that tore a town apart. It should have been a tragic but straightforward case. A woman, a police officer, a snowy night, a body left behind. In January of 22, when John O'Keefe, a highly regarded Boston cop, was found unresponsive in the front yard of another officer's home, the pieces looked like they added up fast. According to police and prosecutors, the story was clear. Karen Reed, his girlfriend, had dropped him off drunk. Then hit him with her SUV, and left him to die in a snowstorm. That was the headline. That was the narrative. And that was the beginning. But what came next, what's still unraveling in that Massachusetts courtroom, isn't just a murder trial. It's a full-blown trust crisis, a war of perception, and maybe the most disturbing small-town firestorm in recent legal memory. Because Karen Reed is not just on trial for murder. She is on trial for being the woman who dared to say, "The system is lying." John O'Keefe was a 16-year-old veteran of the Boston PD. He was well-liked. He had taken in his niece and nephew after the death of their parents and was known by many in Canton, Massachusetts, as a good guy. Now, Karen Reed, by contrast, was not part of the law enforcement inner circle. She was a financial analyst and a college professor. Smart, successful, outspoken. She and John had been dating for a couple of years, off and on. Like many relationships, it wasn't perfect. But there were no public signs of abuse or any danger. Until that night. On January 28th of 22, Reed and O'Keefe were drinking. Accounts differ on exactly how the night played out, but according to prosecutors, Karen dropped him off outside a fellow officer's house, located at 34 Fairview Road, sometime after midnight. And then at some point, she drove away. By morning, John O'Keefe was found in the front yard, unconscious and cold, with injuries to his head and his arm. He would be later declared dead. Police quickly zeroed in on Karen Reed. Her SUV had a broken taillight. They claimed the trajectory matched. They said she admitted to hitting him while drunk. She was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence, and leaving the scene of personal injury and death. Can you imagine having a night out and going to look for your boyfriend and have this put on you? Wow. But the narrative was simple. She killed him, she panicked, and then she lied. But then Karen said something else, something that flipped this case upside down. I didn't hit him. From the start, Karen insisted she did not hit John O'Keefe. Her claim, she dropped him off, he walked inside or toward the house, and that was the last she saw of him. But her defense team had questions that the prosecution didn't seem eager to answer. Why was John O'Keefe lying in the front yard of a house full of fellow law enforcement officers, and nobody noticed this until morning? Why weren't there any usable surveillance videos? Why was the scene allegedly cleaned up before a full forensic review? And perhaps most importantly, what if he never made it back outside? What if John O'Keefe was attacked inside that house? So then suddenly Karen wasn't just a suspect. She was suggesting something far more dangerous, that a police officer may have died inside a fellow cop's home, that others in that house knew what really happened, and that the system wasn't telling the truth. There's no denying there was a broken taillight on Karen's SUV. Shards of red plastic were found near John's body. Her own words, captured in audio by a friend, reportedly include her saying, "I hit him." But context matters, and her lawyers have fought back hard. They've argued the taillight shards, they were planted at the scene. They weren't naturally there because police didn't find them during the first search. It was only after Karen's car was already in custody that they found them. Then the audio was taken out of context. Under extreme emotional stress, wondering what happened, this does not prove guilt. The injuries on O'Keefe's body are inconsistent with a hit and run, and more aligned with blunt force trauma, maybe dog bites even. And the house had 2 aggressive dogs. And there's more. The lead investigator in the case is allegedly friends with the homeowner whose property John was found on. Did you follow that? Let's do that again. So the lead investigator in this case is allegedly friends with the homeowner whose property John was found on. So text messages from local law enforcement figures show mocking attitudes toward Karen, joking about her being mentally ill and even unstable. They have that. One officer involved in the initial stages of the investigation is now facing unrelated criminal charges himself. So more going on. It's messy. It's ugly. And all of it, every contradiction, every inconsistency, every accusation, has now officially been laid before the jury. As of this recording, of course, both sides have rested. The trial is over. The jury is deliberating. A verdict could come at any moment. So what we're doing here right now, we're putting the whole puzzle on the table before someone officially declares it solved. And make no mistake, the moment that verdict drops, this case isn't over. It could just be the beginning of something even bigger. All right, let's continue. Now, if you've been anywhere exposed to this trial, you will know it did not take long for Karen's case to become something bigger than itself. Online Reddit threads began dissecting inconsistencies, Facebook groups started tracking court filings, and TikTok videos drew attention to potential cover-ups. And then suddenly, it was Free Karen Reed. Signs began appearing all over town. People painted them on their lawns, hung them in windows, wore them on shirts. Karen wasn't just a defendant here. To many, she was a victim of institutional corruption. And if you watch people on the lawn actually while they're deliberating and interviewing people, they go ahead and just talk all about this. They view the institutional corruption as too much and being okayed and overlooked for too long. And for Karen, they feel she's a lone woman being framed by an old boys club, trying to protect its own. And in a twist that made things even more volatile, that same old boys club, the local police, began monitoring and sometimes confronting her supporters. Protesters showed up outside courtrooms. Bystanders live-streamed. The case became a public referendum on trust. Trust in police, in the courts, in the idea that justice is even possible when power protects itself. Isn't that the fear of so many? What if I get caught in a mess like this? Without the money, how would you fight the power?
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Cuando compras en JCPenney los outfits del verano con tu cupón de 20% extra, no solo te estás preparando para las fiestas y el verano, te estás preparando para lucir super top toda la temporada, con 20% extra en tu bolsillo. La prueba está en el recibo. Sí, es JCPenney. Cupón válido hasta el 22 de junio en selección de estilos. Aplican algunas exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.
Because then power wins, and that's why people are watching this. It wasn't just drama, it's pressure. For the jury, for the DA, pretty much on everyone. Now, by mid-23, the Karen Reed case had evolved into something almost unrecognizable from where it began, which was already pretty amazing. I mean, yes, it was still about death. It was still about a trial. But underneath it, the ground had shifted. Neighbors were refusing to speak to each other because of the division. Businesses lost customers based on whether they displayed a sign. Canton, Massachusetts, once just another Boston suburb, had now become a symbol of who we believe, who gets protected, and how quickly a justice system can either unravel or close ranks. You know, they say a courtroom is a stage. And if that's true, then the Karen Reed trial has been Shakespeare, right? A tragedy, a farce, a public reckoning all at one time. And now, as the jury deliberates behind closed doors, the curtain has dropped. But not before this case delivered some of the most jaw-dropping, trust-shattering, publicly broadcasted implosions in recent legal memory. Because what happened inside that courtroom, it didn't just challenge the state's case. It detonated it in front of a nation watching closely, watching TikTok clips and Twitter threads and everything in real time. Let's be clear, this was supposed to be a clean case, right? It's done. They decided she's guilty. We're done. No one look over here. The state charged Karen Reed with second-degree murder and manslaughter. They had the motive, a drunken fight. They had physical evidence, the taillight shards. They had a key quote, "I hit him." But what they didn't have, any credible witnesses. Over and over again, the people brought in to seal Karen's fate ended up cracking open doubts instead. Take Detective Michael Proctor, the lead investigator. Now, by the time he finished testifying, the jury wasn't just doubting his story. They were watching a man implode under oath. The defense exposed text messages where Proctor called Karen a whack job, a psycho, and more things. He joked about her allegedly being bipolar, because that's funny, and he admitted he used unprofessional and biased language. But then he tried to act like none of that mattered. But it did matter, because if the man in charge of solving this death thought the suspect was a joke before she was even charged, how do you trust any part of the investigation? And I mean, it wasn't just him. Other detectives testified they could not explain why taillight shards were magically found at the scene after Karen's SUV had already been towed. Key witnesses contradicted themselves. Forensic experts suddenly got cagey. The entire prosecution strategy, hit and run, clear-cut case, it started looking like wet paper under cross-examination. Karen Reed's attorneys didn't just argue that she didn't do it. They argued that someone else did. And that entire system, the entire system, closed ranks to protect that someone. Their theory? That John O'Keefe never made it past the threshold of that house on Fairview Road. That he was assaulted inside by someone at the party. That the body was carried outside and staged. And that the dogs in the home attacked him, and his injuries reflect bites. It's not a car impact. And that police, some of whom were friends or family of people at the party, covered it up. I mean, I know, sounds extreme. Well, maybe. But the defense didn't just drop a wild theory here and then walk away. They backed all this up with medical experts, inconsistencies in time logs, failure to preserve evidence, and a very big question. Why didn't anyone at the party notice that one of their guests, a fellow officer, was missing until the next morning? If there was a moment where the Karen Reed trial shifted from chaos to full-scale unraveling, it came when the defense laid out the timeline, and it didn't make sense. Texts between people at the house were vague. Security footage was missing or somehow unusable. One neighbor reported hearing arguing and dogs barking in the middle of the night, and that would be hours after Karen had supposedly hit him and driven away. And then came the dogs. John O'Keefe's body had unusual injuries on his arm and his head, and the defense brought in experts who said flat out they looked like bite wounds. More importantly, those wounds didn't match what you'd expect from being hit by a car. Blood spatter patterns were inconsistent. There were bruises under his eye that one medical expert said it pointed to blunt force trauma, not a windshield hit. And the condition of his body did not match someone who'd simply been left in the snow. So it was starting to look like the only thing cold that night maybe was the silence. I mean, most trials are slow, procedural, and boring, but not this one. From the beginning, people were lining up outside the courthouse at dawn to get seats. TikTok users were streaming recaps. Podcasters and armchair analysts, they were pulling court transcripts and talking about them line by line. It wasn't just the facts that were on trial here. It was the entire criminal justice system in this town. And the jury, let's talk about this. They were not sequestered. They were going home at night, passing protesters that were holding signs. They were hearing the buzz of the world outside, even if they weren't watching videos. It created a level of pressure that you don't usually see in cases like this. I mean, no matter what verdict they deliver, someone's going to scream cover up for sure, or miscarriage of justice. I mean, the second it drops. When it finally came for closing arguments, the prosecution, they went all in on emotion. They painted Karen Reed as angry and irrational, obviously intoxicated. They leaned hard into her quote, "I hit him," and claimed she knew what she did and tried to manipulate those around her. They told the jury, this is a tragic case, but don't let conspiracy theories distract you from the truth. But then the defense stood up and took a blowtorch to that narrative. They reminded the jury that Karen Reed has no criminal history. She has cooperated from the start. The evidence against her is full of holes. And most of all, the state's entire case hinges on a timeline that doesn't hold up and a theory that doesn't make sense. They put the system on trial and argued that Karen was just collateral damage in a blue wall that never cracks, even when a man dies. And then they rested. And so as of now, we wait. I mean, there's nothing left to say in court. The jury's deliberating. They could come out any second. Karen Reed's future hangs in the balance. And the truth? That might not even be the point of any of this anymore. I mean, no matter what the verdict is, this case has already changed everything. En masse, trust in police has plummeted. Citizen journalism, for better or for worse, has been fully mainstreamed into legal coverage, basically. And the line between fact, theory, and narrative, it's blurred beyond recognition. And that's why I'm here, to talk about this case and just summarize what's going on here. This isn't about a woman who may or may not have killed her boyfriend. This is about a justice system that may or may not be capable of handling the truth. As we record this, 12 people are behind closed doors, weighing evidence, timelines, testimony, and one woman's future. And the clock is ticking, because at any moment now, the jury could come back with a verdict. Guilty or not guilty. Manslaughter or murder. A clean break or a hung jury. Whatever they decide, it's not just going to hit Karen Reed. It's going to hit the entire town. A police department, a state's justice system, a country, and a public that's already lost faith in what the law is supposed to look like. I mean, this trial hasn't been just about what happened on that snowy night. It's kind of a national stress test to the question, do people, our public in America, still believe in the system? All right, let's start with the simplest outcome. If Karen Reed is found guilty of murder or manslaughter, I mean, if that happens, the legal system gets what it wanted. The state walks away with a win. The DA checks the box. The police can claim they did their job. But at what cost? Because millions of people, I mean, not just in Massachusetts, they've already made up their minds. This was a cover-up. That Karen Reed was framed. That the system never gave her a chance. So if that guilty verdict drops, it does not end the chaos. It ignites it. You can expect protests outside the courthouse and online, for that matter. Calls for federal investigations into the Canton PD. Massive backlash on social media from influencers and podcasters, independent legal experts. They're going to grab all they can on this. And possibly new filings from the defense, citing judicial misconduct or maybe investigative bias. In other words, if Karen's found guilty, the narrative won't be justice served, okay? It's going to be corruption won. And the real question will become, can that community survive it? Can anyone survive this? It's kind of a symbol of justice at the moment. What will the public do? But now let's flip it. What if she walks? What if she is found not guilty? And legally, that's just the end. You cannot retry her for the same crime. But politically and culturally, in terms of the institutions she just spent months accusing of corruption, and that's where things get explosive. Because if Karen Read walks, here's what's going to happen next. There will be pressure for charges against people who were in that house that night that John O'Keefe died. That's for sure. Public calls for accountability from the Canton Police Department, the state police, even the DA, and demands to reopen the investigation into what did actually happen inside 34 Fairview Road. Possible civil suits, both from Karen herself and from others impacted by the cover-up allegations. And let's not forget the psychological shift. If she walks, it tells the public, yep, sometimes the system lies. Yes, if you fight hard enough, you can win. But only if you're very lucky and very loud. Because if Karen Read's innocent, then the entire mechanism of law enforcement in that town and maybe across the state becomes a suspect. But then what if there's a mistrial, right? That last option, no verdict. If the jury cannot agree, mistrial. That would prolong the nightmare for everyone. Karen stays in limbo. The prosecution decides whether to refile. And the public stays fractured and divided. More divided because of something else, right? We're adding to the division. And also even more enraged because there'll be no resolution that came from such a high-profile trial that so many people involved themselves in. In some ways, this is the most likely outcome, but it's also the most dangerous because it doesn't end anything. It just kind of resets the war. No matter what the verdict is, guilty or not guilty or mistrial, something deeper has already happened. The Karen Read trial has permanently changed the way Americans engage with criminal cases. And why? Because the public didn't just consume this trial. They participated in it. They read court documents, analyzed forensic data, created maps and graphs, theories, spread, podcasts. They made noise. And in doing so, it shifts the balance of power. The courtroom wasn't just a place of judgment. It became a live stream arena where the justice system itself was judged. And it exposed how fragile that system really is when the public doesn't trust the players. Now, let's take a step back. Karen Read isn't a typical defendant either, right? She's white, educated, articulate, professionally respected. She was not just pulled up off the street. She taught finance. She had a seemingly stable life. And yet, she gets branded like everybody else. Emotional, crazy, alcoholic, unstable, dangerous. What I mean by that is they pull anything that was involved in this case and they create something out of it. She is now an alcoholic because she was drinking with her boyfriend that night. Everything gets embellished. The language used against her felt surgical, as if the system knew exactly how to discredit a woman without really having to prove anything. Now imagine this were someone with less privilege, okay? Because Karen has that. Someone with less money.
You have unread texts from Golf Buds. Would you like me to read them?
Yes.
Okay. Johnny says, what are the nicotine pouches you had on the course? Walker says, 8 milligram on nicotine pouches. Billy says, I love the mint one.
I like that one.
Walker says, me too. By the way, you both stink at golf. LOLOL.
Come on. Carry on nicotine pouches. Shop now at onnicotine.com/group text. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Maybe darker skin. Fewer resources for sure. Would they even have survived this long? Would the story have ever reached the public at all? Because there's a case like this out there right now that you don't know about, and neither do I. Karen Reed's case has become a lightning rod for broader issues. How women are treated when they accuse the system of lying, how quickly law enforcement circles the wagons, and how thin the line is between due process and public destruction. And this is where the Karen Reed trial gets existential. If the prosecution is right and Karen did this, then the system worked and a killer was brought to justice. But if the defense is even partially right, if there was any manipulation of evidence, any pressure to shield the people in that house, any back-channel bias in the investigation, then the real question becomes, what is the system protecting? Because it's not truth. Certainly not public safety. It's not even John O'Keefe's memory, your so-called friend and brother. It's protecting itself, its people, its power, its reputation. And that, more than anything, is what is at stake here. If systems will frame a woman to avoid holding their own accountable, then every citizen, that means every one of you, every one of us, has something to fear. So now what? Well, now we just wait. By the time this episode airs, the verdict may have dropped, because it's any second. Or maybe not. Still, I hope this summary serves. Whatever the outcome, here is what's clear. Karen Reed didn't just stand trial in a courtroom. She stood trial in the court of public opinion, and that court is more awake, more informed, and more unforgiving than before. The justice system is no longer the only voice in the room, is it? It's now sharing space with millions of citizens armed with receipts, records, and righteous outrage. And if the system fails to deliver actual justice, it won't be able to bury the truth like it used to. Not anymore. Whether Karen is guilty or not, this trial has exposed something rotten in the structure. Whether she walks or gets convicted, or has been by this time that this episode airs, she could be convicted or free. But the trust has already been broken either way, and whether you believe her or don't, you now know that the story is not quite as simple as they told you at the start. Now, we are going to get into another trial, another storm, but this one isn't just in the courtroom. You know this. It's spreading across the entertainment industry, federal courts, and the darkest corners of power. Diddy's under fire, and if he takes the stand, wow, everything changes. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs was untouchable. Music mogul, fashion icon, business titan. The face of hip-hop's golden age turned corporate powerhouse. Champagne and yachts, private jets, and platinum plaques. But now his homes have been raided. His name is at the center of multiple lawsuits, and federal agents are circling with a level of heat that doesn't just feel serious. It feels final. Because the headlines you've seen, Diddy accused, Combs denies allegations, civil suits filed. They're just the surface. The real story is what is unfolding behind the scenes, in sealed courtrooms, in federal task force briefings, in whispered calls between entertainment execs who know this could be the beginning of a total collapse. This is not tabloid drama here. This is a RICO play. And if Diddy takes the stand or gets indicted, the fallout won't just be personal. It could take the whole industry with him. And it started with one woman. In November of 23, R&B singer Cassie Ventura filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy, alleging over a decade of abuse, coercion, trafficking, and control. Her allegations were detailed, brutal, and precise. Physical abuse, forced drug use, sexual coercion, and a disturbing pattern of manipulation and entrapment. Within 24 hours, this case was settled, and that's when things got louder. Because when someone pays to silence something that horrifying, that quickly, people take notice. the public, and investigators. Since that first filing, at least 8 more lawsuits have been filed, including allegations of drugging and assault, human trafficking, revenge porn, sex with minors, bribery, and witness intimidation. Each one more damning than the last, each one painting a picture not just of a man gone rogue, but of a man protected by power, money, and silence. March 25, 2024. Federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security raided 2 of Diddy's homes, one in LA, one in Miami. This wasn't the local sheriff showing up with a warrant. This was a multi-agency federal strike. It involved Homeland Security investigations, the FBI, NYPD task force members, cybercrime, and trafficking specialists. The raids were carried out simultaneously. It was a coordinated hit. Electronics were seized. Security footage was taken. Sources say even NDAs and internal communications were copied for forensic review. This wasn't about drugs. This wasn't about a single incident. It was about patterns, networks, systems. And that's when the word RICO started to float through legal circles. And I mean, everyone is talking about RICO now. What is it? Why does it matter? What's going on? Is this the mob? Because everyone thinks of the mob when we think of these things. Let's be clear right from the top. This is federal court, and it's nothing like the celebrity-friendly slap-on-the-wrist sentencing we've seen in some other high-profile cases. If Sean Diddy Combs is convicted under RICO and the related charges he's currently facing, including sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, transportation for illegal sexual activity, and obstruction of justice, then the fallout will not be subtle. It will be historic. Let's talk numbers. RICO is one of the heaviest legal weapons in the federal arsenal. It was designed to take down entire crime syndicates, mafia families, gang leaders, cartel heads. And the reason it works is because it allows for sentence stacking. For RICO convictions alone, the sentencing range typically starts at 15 years, and it can extend to life in prison, depending on the severity and number of our underlying offenses. If the court determines there were minors involved, coercion, drugging, and cross-state transportation, the charges can escalate. And the court can apply enhanced penalties if they believe the crimes were carried out over a long period or involved significant resources or profit. So we're not talking about a couple of years or celebrity jail. We're talking about the rest of his life, gone. And given the breadth of evidence presented so far, including surveillance footage, forensic analysis, victim testimony, flight records, and seized communications, a guilty verdict would all but guarantee maximum sentencing pressure from prosecutors. If found guilty, it won't just be Sean Combs, the man who suffers. It will be every branch of the empire he's built over the last 3 decades. Here's what's likely to happen next, if this happens. Immediate seizure of assets tied to the criminal enterprise under the RICO forfeiture clause. This would include his real estate, Miami, LA, and New York, his private jets, cars, music catalog ownership, royalties, his liquor brand shares, Ciroc, De Leon, technology and fashion investments, even digital property like websites, NFTs, and unreleased intellectual property. Anything prosecutors can link to the alleged criminal enterprise is fair game here, and they will go after it, not just to punish him, but it's to pay victims and to make an example out of him. And then if he's convicted, he doesn't fall alone. The structure of a RICO case means other people, named or unnamed, will be implicated in that conviction. This includes bodyguards, pilots, assistants, security consultants, studio handlers, and potentially high-profile collaborators who helped silence victims. clean up scenes, or intimidate witnesses. Prosecutors have already hinted in sealed findings that co-conspirators are being identified. A conviction opens the door for additional indictments, plea deals, and further investigations. Some that may be in motion behind the scenes already. Think Harvey Weinstein's fall. Think Jeffrey Epstein's web. A conviction here says, we got the kingpin and now we're coming for everyone he paid to keep it going. And then, once a man like this is convicted, survivors who've stayed silent out of fear or shame or sometimes just pure exhaustion, they start to come forward. Because now they know they're not alone. They know they can be believed. And the man who held power over them is no longer untouchable. Expect more civil lawsuits, more federal complaints, possibly even international allegations if evidence surfaces from overseas trips or parties. I mean, this conviction would become a door opening, not a case closing. There are already multiple civil cases against Diddy. Okay, let's talk civil. But a guilty verdict shifts everything because now victims no longer have to prove what happened in isolation. Okay, these civil suits go nuclear. That's what I'm trying to say. They can point to the conviction and say, the court already confirmed this man was guilty of trafficking, violence, coercion, and control. That makes civil litigation easier and faster and more likely to succeed. We're talking massive financial judgments, public testimony in civil court, additional discovery, which could pull in even more names and incidents. He could lose hundreds of millions of dollars in payouts, not including the value of his businesses, branding, and deals. And there's no coming back from a guilty RICO conviction tied to trafficking. Every brand will drop him. Every collaborator will scrub his name. Streaming platforms will face public pressure to remove his music. Labels, agents, and former artists may be subpoenaed for related investigations. Even people who had nothing to do with the abuse will be guilty by association just by staying silent too long. The cultural and business world will treat him as toxic, not because they want justice, but because they want distance. It won't just be a cancellation. This will be an erasure. And then, of course, the cultural shift, right? His legacy wasn't built only on music. It was built on his entire persona. Bad boy for life, the entrepreneur, the mogul. But if he's found guilty, that image collapses. And in its place, now we have a case study, a cautionary tale, another name in the long list of powerful men who abused their platforms to harm others and finally got caught. Criminals can be celebrities too, you know. This conviction would not just impact him. It would ripple through hip-hop culture. Black celebrity representation, entertainment law, survivor support systems, and media accountability. You know, when you have someone this rich and this famous and this protected and they go down, it makes every other survivor, artist, and enabler ask the question, am I next? What have I done? And now if Diddy's convicted, no, he's not just losing his freedom or money. You know, that's what we see all the time. But he's losing things that we can't see, right? One thing he's built his whole identity on, control. This is a man who controlled his image, his artists, the spaces around him, and allegedly the people he abused. Prison, especially federal prison, that strips all of that power. He will no longer control his environment. He won't be protected by celebrity or cash or armed security. He'll be one inmate in a system that doesn't care how many Grammys he has. And for a man who built an empire out of dominance, that's the ultimate fall, isn't it? I mean, if Sean Diddy Combs is found guilty, it won't just be the end of his career. This will be the end of a system that protected him for decades. Because this thing will have legs. His conviction could mark the fall of a man who built an empire on silence, fear, and control. And when that empire crumbles, the sound it makes, It's going to echo through the music industry and the courts and the culture for many years to come. And now let's talk about the flip side. Because a not guilty verdict won't clean the slate. It won't undo the damage. It won't silence the accusations. It will just move the fight out of court and into culture. If the jury clears Sean Diddy Combs of these charges, whether it's on technicalities, weak witness moments, or gaps in the evidence, let me tell you what happens next. Legally, he walks, right? No prison, no conviction, no criminal record. He walks out of that courtroom a free man. But freedom and redemption are not the same thing. When a man is accused of trafficking and abuse and coercion and cover-ups by more than a dozen plaintiffs, and the only thing stopping those accusations from being law is the word reasonable doubt, the public remembers. And the evidence? The texts, the flights, the NDAs, the sealed deals, all of that is still out there. So yes, he's legally cleared, but that win may come with a price. Even if he beats the charges, the Diddy brand is still done. He's not going to go back to the Met Gala. He's not going to headline Coachella. He's not sipping Ciroc in a Super Bowl ad. And here's why. Sponsors don't care about guilt. They care about risk. Streaming platforms will weigh public pressure. The public may get to decide on that. Court of public opinion. Younger fans, especially Gen Z, have no loyalty to a legacy brand with baggage. And artists will avoid collabs, not out of principle, but out of self-preservation. Just not a good idea. Because no one wants to be the next name dragged down in a "why do you still work with him" backlash. Even an acquittal makes Diddy a career liability, really. The civil lawsuits, hey, those still continue. Guess what? Any not guilty verdict in criminal court doesn't mean anything in civil court. Civil cases have a lower burden of proof, preponderance of evidence, instead of beyond a reasonable doubt, if you didn't know. That means that the plaintiffs only have to show that there's more likely than not that he did it. So if he walks from the criminal trial, you will see ongoing lawsuits from survivors, major financial settlements, that is for sure, public testimony that could be even more damaging in open court, imagine. And the juries in those civil cases, they're watching the same trial footage we all are. They are not immune to this story, the story that's already been told. And then we have the media. Wow, what are they going to do trying to balance all this? It's where things will get a little slippery. If Diddy is found not guilty, you can expect major media outlets, especially ones tied to industry PR, like TMZ and Entertainment Tonight, certain legacy hip-hop platforms. They're going to run headlines. You just watch. Combs cleared of all charges. No criminal activity found in federal trial. Sean Diddy Combs says he's ready to rebuild. We will see those if this happens. They will start framing the outcome as vindication. But let's be honest, that is damage control, not journalism. I hope if you've been listening to my podcast, you are learning that. Those same outlets ignored or downplayed these lawsuits. They benefited from Diddy's access, exclusives, and appearances. They have a financial interest in keeping celebrity cycles going. So we can't trust all that they're going to say. Not that we can trust them now. They're not independent observers. Not anymore. They're players in the machine. And we can expect that. I don't know if you've been watching TMZ. They have the United States versus Sean Diddy Combs. And it has been a little surprising. And I've gotten some comments asking about this. Why does it seem like TMZ is downplaying this RICO angle? I have people writing in about this because it seems a little confusing, right? They're naming all these things. They seem to be in RICO, but TMZ just keeps pushing. This is not RICO. Okay? RICO is very terrifying to the entertainment industry. okay? Because if the government can prove that someone like Diddy ran a criminal enterprise using the music industry, then it definitely opens doors to investigate other things like labels, promoters, managers, brand partners, distribution networks. And that's bad news for business. So media outlets that have connections to these industries and to those ad dollars that they spend, they are going to work overtime trying to convince you that this is not a RICO case. That's why you're hearing that out there. They're connected and they owe something. They're not going to just flat out, crush this thing. They're going to hold out. This is not about RICO. They are saying, this is just about sex and celebrity. Hey, we see that all the time. What is this? They're saying it's not that deep. They just can't get it. But it is that deep. And I understand why people are saying that, but if you're listening here, you want the truth. It is that deep. Because if this is RICO, then it's not just about punishing one man. Can't say it enough. It's about exposing an entire system and all the people who looked away. Look at who's all looking away now. You can look for yourself. If Diddy walks, the machine will try to spin it. The headlines will soften, the suits will quiet down, and the media will reset for sure. But we have to remember the survivors and collaborators and a generation of fans that are watching this all unfold. A not guilty verdict will not erase this story. It just moves it somewhere that's harder to control, really. In the court of public opinion, the trial never really dies. This case should remind us that high-profile trials don't always end the way we expect. We've seen celebrity defendants walk. O.J. Simpson, Johnny Depp, even Harvey Weinstein in his LA case. But we've also seen real convictions stick, especially when federal law turns the screws. RICO is not just for mob bosses anymore. Be clear, it's being used, and it has been successful. On R. Kelly for trafficking and coordinating abuse, Tekashi 6ix9ine for gang conspiracy, and Young Thug, who's still on trial for sweeping RICO cases tied to a rap crew allegedly functioning as a criminal enterprise. This isn't just about guilt or innocence. This is about power, protection, and what the system will or won't hold accountable when the cameras are on. We'll have to wait and see on these. I hope this episode was helpful. You've been listening to True Crime in the Court of Public Opinion, and I am Alexis Knight. Today's story wasn't just Sean Combs and Reed. It's about what happens in big trials when there are things that we maybe don't understand or don't expect. Thanks for listening. Subscribe, share, and don't believe all those headlines out there. Remember, headline lies Mondays and Fridays. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you guys the next time.